The photo box needed a few things in order to work for what I needed it to do. Since it was more than I wanted to spend to have a professional come in, I needed to keep the cost below $300. But I didn't want to babysit the photo booth all night, so I decided to build a photo box that could upload straight to a social media site. To start, I took a 4x8 sheet of MDF wood and measured out 22 inches from the edge. Since I didn't have a table saw that could handle this size, I wanted to make sure I started on the factory edge of the wood to make the four main sides of the box. I used my circular saw quite a bit, and after buying a cost-effective saw that lasted just over a year of little use, I decided to buy a better one. I have been using my new one on a more regular basis, and it makes a huge difference having a little more power. I'm going to use a straight edge guide to make my cut, so I want to make sure I measure the distance to the blade from the guard. This straight edge has been very handy for me. Its design is to clamp down on wood so you can run your circular saw alongside it for a straight long cut. This solid pink insulation is great for putting underneath areas you want to cut but don't have an extra set of hands. You can see instead of having the wood hang off the side of the table, I can cut on top of the table without any worry of damage to its top. This will also alleviate the recoil grab you get from the wood pinching the blades as you cut it because of the gravity pushing against it. So my 22-inch sides are now becoming 20-inch sides. I measured multiple times, but I can't get a straight cut to save my life. But I came up with a solution. I attached some scrap wood to the bottom edge of a piece of MDF and countersunk the screws. One not as good as the others, though. I then took some white glue and sawdust and filled the countersunk holes and sanded smooth. After attaching it to the saw, I measured out the 20-inch and 22.5-inch spots for my guard. To attach the extension, I took a step-down bit, which works great on metal and plastics because of its cone design. It doesn't grab and twist, but shaves a perfect hole. I drilled 2 holes in the side of my table saw's lip, and then ran 2 small bolts through the scrap MDF and table saw. And to make sure it could hold some weight, I put a 2x4 leg under the MDF. The guard has no issues clamping to the MDF, and now I have a table saw that can cut over 22 inches. The table saw's guard tightly clamps down on the MDF, but it doesn't line up as straight as if it was clamping on solid metal, so you do need to line it up correctly. I have some 90-degree corner clamps that are great for holding boards just right. This came in very handy when I glued then stapled using a brad nailer. Always make sure you don't overload or break or it can slow you way down.
Can you go downstairs and flip the breaker?
Is it marked?
Well, it's number 8.
Number 8?
Yeah.
Guess what? It wasn't 8. Lucky for me, my wife was nice enough to go in the basement and check the breakers and not listen to me say it was breaker 8. I only lost lights for a moment and she turned breaker 8 back on. Turns out I have 3 breakers going to my garage, and I moved all the lights off of one of them and plugged the air compressor into that. After that, now no more breakers are having issues. Now that 4 of the sides are done, we can take a look at the button that will activate taking pictures.
Yes. Yes, 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 yes. Yeah. Yeah, baby.
Now let's take it apart.
Well, yes. Give me a Y, give me an E, give me an yeah. Yes. Yes. Well, yes. Yes. Yes, 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 yes. Yeah.
Okay, so what I did was actually just made a template of a old card, about the same thickness. Clipped all the wires off here. No matter what I did, it wasn't working, so I figured, well, I can always save this board for a future project. And I just drilled out everything to the exact of this, or close at least. And then I soldered the 2 connections there so the button clicks. Everything's in there still. Took the batteries out, so it won't make any noise when it's being used. But what I'm going to do now is put it back together and give it a test and see if it works. You can see here this is actually a keyboard controller.
One of the reasons there's so many wires soldered to it right now is it actually was supposed to go into a MAME, which hopefully I'll finish building someday and get posted. But right now, just 2 wires out of all this are going to get used. Basically, they hit the enter key. Okay, so let's put it back together and get it hooked to a laptop and see how it works.
Okay, moment of truth. If I hit this and it acts as an enter button, we're okay.
Now it's time to center up the sides and cut some holes for the recessed handles I'm going to use. I wanted a commercial look, so I decided I would plastic dip the box and use some heavy duty handles. The handles look great installed, but one thing I noticed later was that I had them in upside down. The way I have them in, you can only pick up the box palms in. If you pick it up palms out, it wants to break your hand. Yet, I still have not flipped them. Basically do the same for the other side, but make sure to know what's the top and what's the bottom. If you look at the sides of the box, you will notice that I'm constantly putting new marks on, letting me know which way I should be going. It doesn't take much to flip a box over and just cut the wrong dimensions into it because of a little mishap in thinking the top is the bottom. Just like I was saying, I'm marking all sides so that when I flip the box, I put the fan on the correct corner. I happen to have a square that has the right width for how I want to mount the fan, so this will make things much easier. And I also have a 3-inch hole saw that came in a kit for hiding wires in the wall, so it'll make a hole just right for the fans to be mounted inside. Then just repeat for the other side, and you should have matching holes that look good, like it was commercially built. You will notice I put the clamps back on the box, and the reason is because I'm going to trace the inside of the box on a piece of MDF and then cut it to fit the recess in the box. 2 reasons for doing this is, 1, it's stronger. Having it recessed in is a lot stronger than just setting it on top like a cap. 2, even though just a little bit, it will make the box smaller. Every bit helps. MDF is not light. Now it's time to measure in where I want the monitor and start the process of cutting. I went with a Dell monitor for a couple reasons. Where I work, they have been very reliable, and I was able to get 2 of these off eBay for $45, including the shipping. They didn't come with stands, but I wouldn't use it in the project anyways. And the other one's going into a MAME cabinet that I'm building, which that also would not be using it. I'm first going to trace the monitor, then measure the bevel around the screen and draw that in with a straight edge. I do not want anything but the screen showing. Time for the drill and jigsaw again. I can't stress enough how using pink insulation makes my life so much easier.
Tied up on my tripod here. I just want to take a second. I had to take a pause, and I didn't have any safe place to put my router. Don't have a lot of room in my garage. You probably noticed I have a lot of stuff backed up in here. The only proper stand I actually have is the one my chop saw is on. It gets real old taking stuff on and off. And earlier in the video you saw where I actually turned my 10-inch router table saw into a 24-inch. I do gotta put another bolt in here, but that won't take very long to do. A lot of this stuff I bought when I worked at Sears at one time. A lot of it was close-out floor models. 10-inch table saw seemed like a great idea at the time. Turns out you really don't ever cut anything that's 10 inches. And a skill saw is not always the straightest, especially if you're like me. So one of the things I had to do here, since you'll notice I actually used a workbench, and I've actually screwed this in here so it won't move, is I took a couple of my sawhorses, the one you probably noticed me using pink insulation on for cutting, and from underneath I screwed in 4 screws on both sides to 38-inch long 2x4s. And then here you'll see I took some screws. You can't see the washer, it's sunk too far, so what I ended up doing was taking a bolt head like over here, and then to help stabilize it I took the wood I cut out of the front board and made a spot for my vacuum cleaner and bungee cord it here, help with the vibration and make sure it don't fall off. And you'll see that actually plugs in up front here to suck up the dust in the router. But my tools they're decent tools. They're nothing great, but they are on the small side. They're not meant for commercial use by any means, but I just enjoy using them. And it's, you know, if you can do a project yourself, it's definitely cheaper than paying for someone to do it.
Here is where I'll take a piece of MDF with the factory edge and screw it into the front piece for the monitor. My router has a bit in it that will allow me to copy whatever is right above it. This will give me the clean cut lines I need to make it fit the monitor screen. Now I want to make a notch out of the board above where the monitor will be. This is where I'll run the USB and the base of the webcam I'm using. Now I will use the same router bit, but make an extension where I can clamp the wood down and use the router in hand. I want to cut into the wood but not go all the way through. By doing this, I make a recess that the monitor will rest on, allowing me to have the monitor be more secure, and if down the road I could cut some plexiglass to fit in it. Now I want to drill a hole for the button under the monitor, but I don't want to make it where I can't mount it to the wood somehow. I ended up using 3M adhesive tape and it worked great. It's the same tape I used in my last video fixing the rubber molding on top of my van. For the back I did the same as the front and traced the inside and cut it out. Now I have to decide where I want the hinge and cut the back into 3 pieces. The extra cuts on the door piece is so that air can come into the box. I have 2 fan holes blowing out, but it needs to be able to draw air from somewhere or it won't make a difference. So that the door doesn't want to fall in, I will need to glue and nail some stop boards in also. Now that the door looks like it's going to work, I'm going to do something I usually don't do: read directions. I want to install a lock since this is designed to be unattended but has a laptop inside it, and I don't want anyone messing around with the insides. I like these piano hinges because they are so light but once fully attached very strong, but if I had to do it again I would have designed the door to open to the side. Okay, so I have to get a bracket going from there to there to hold that monitor in place. But I want to put something right here that whatever board's holding this in the back screws into. So if anything ever happened to the monitor, it's a cheap eBay monitor. That way I can take it out. I'm not going to glue this section because otherwise you have to smash it all out. Because I took the time to actually route this out and the monitor is actually sitting in the wood, that'll actually take a lot of its force off the board that'll be holding it in. So I'll be able to use this MDF for the brace and everything should be okay. Then I can start getting the webcam wires through up here, get the button through down here, figure out the drill hole, putty up any last holes I have in here, and then I can start plastic tipping it and see how that goes. I'm actually pretty excited to see how that stuff turns out.
Okay, so this piece doesn't actually go to the monitor, but it holds enough where at least I can get placement in there. And I just bolted it through on the back. I used a spades bit to actually do the countersink and then drilled through with a smaller bit. So, let's see how this goes. There we go. Now I just got to come up with some bracing for here and over here to screw into, and then that way I can always unscrew both sides, take the whole board out, unbolt this, and well, actually don't even have to unbolt that if I ever have to swap out the monitor. Okay, so here's a rough mock-up. Handles aren't put on yet, computer's not inside, just have the monitor and the camera and the button. Obviously the button's not going to be taped up like that. It's just up there right now. Just so I can get a look at it. Handles are going to go on the side. The recessed handles. And then the small holes actually for fans. That's why there's one on both sides, so when the heat rises, it will help push it out. We got the top bracket, the bottom. The hinge will go down here. You'll see some of the wires. USB cords are plenty long enough. There's going to be a lot of them because all the fans run off them too. So you got a webcam and the keyboard controller that runs for the button. And you can see where it all got bracketed in. And then there's the webcam. I'm going to secure the webcam better so no idiot pulls it out or something like that. But yeah, it's time to take it apart, start sanding it, and start plastic.
Don't get me wrong, I really like how the plastic bonded to the wood, most likely because of how porous it is, but I was a little bummed with the lack of viscosity. I was hoping it would fill in the nail holes more and some of the little gaps and crevices, but it still looked really good. Next time just means I have to putty up better, sawdust glue fill. So I had a really good time making this actually. It was a lot of fun. It turned out really good. You can see the fan at the bottom there where the laptop sits on top of it. Here comes the laptop. That's with it closed. Here's with it open. Hopefully, there we go. And then on the right hand side, you'll see there's a yellow extension cord going out. And then with the door closed, that goes out a little area I filed out of the door. This was actually a much tougher build than I thought it was going to be, but I still enjoyed it. I actually took 3 days off of work just to get this done, and I worked on it very hard. If you watch the video, you can tell there's daytime, nighttime. I probably have 50 different changes of clothes, but it works really well. I get a lot of compliments on it, and I have a good time actually bringing it to parties. Hopefully I can do something equally as fun and enjoyable soon.